Hey lore lovers, my name's Eric with the Lorebrarians YouTube channel, and welcome to the next installment of our Planeswalker Profile series. Today we'll be discussing a much requested Planeswalker, one whose ambitions and dubious nature have changed the course of events on various planes, and one who played a vital role in the Gatewatch Saga, culminating in the War of the Spark. The human necromancer and native of Dominaria, Liliana Vess. Liliana is complex, battling between her own ambitions and her often buried morality, creating as a result a self-serving but unpredictable character with the power to change the lives of those around her or to end them. We're going to discuss Liliana's unique characteristics, abilities, and notable history in a moment. But before we begin, if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, or if Magic the Gathering is dear to you, consider subscribing to the channel where lore videos are uploaded regularly, or checking out the podcast. And if you'd like to help the channel further, check out my Patreon page where you can assist me in making content and earn some cool perks. The support is much appreciated. Alright, time to retrace the steps of one of the most powerful necromancers in the multiverse. Let's dive in. When one thinks of Liliana Vess, images come to mind of a beautiful and charismatic woman, one whose wit and abilities have earned her seats at the most powerful tables, whose words have bent many to her will. But Liliana's charm is only skin deep. Beneath lies an avaricious, self-centered, and ambitious individual, relentless in her pursuit of personal gain. She's centuries old, a planeswalker that was born before the Great Mending and who has gone to considerable lengths to regain her former power and eternal youth. Liliana was born into the noble House Vess of Benalia on the plane of Dominaria and began her journey as a healer, but quickly found herself relying on darker and darker arts to create her salves and elixirs. She's a master of black mana with predilections towards the power of necromancy. With absolute control over death and decay, Vess is capable of summoning hordes of undead, shambling zombies and reanimated skeletons, to enact her will and defeat her foes. Her power over black mana isn't limited to raising the dead. She's just as likely to corrupt or corrode the living, sending waves of miasma to kill any organic matter that stands in her way. Liliana's deep connection to black mana is manifested in her characteristics. A sorceress who craves power above all else and stops at nothing to achieve her desires. Her contempt for others and cool sarcasm are heard in the flavor text of cards such as Flesh to Dust, where she obliterates an angel and states, "Another day, another avenging angel, another clump of feathers to toss in the trash." Or Disentomb, in which Liliana raises a zombie and says, "Stop complaining. You can rest when you're dead." Oh, sorry. She employs any tool possible to gather more knowledge and clout, a fact that often costs her dearly. Much of her life is spent in the service of demons and under the influence of the mystical chain veil. We can see the terms of Liliana's demonic contract etched like tattoos across her skin, a constant reminder that her soul is not her own. These scars often glow a deep purple when Vess casts spells. Another hallmark of Liliana's appearance is the headpiece she wears, rumored to belong to an archangel Vess slew. She wears it as both trophy and warning to her enemies. Besides her ornate headwear, Liliana also had in her possession the ancient and powerful artifact known as the Chain Veil, a mask created by the Onaki ogres of Chandalar before their civilization was obliterated. It houses the souls of the now extinct race, and grants tremendous power to its user if they're strong enough to survive channeling it. Vess often used the veil to fuel her spells and fulfill her desires, but its curse would slowly plague her thoughts and mind. Liliana's calm demeanor and devil-may-care attitude belie her ambitions and devious manipulations. She's seen dozens of planes rise and fall, all in search of personal gain, but in recent history began the grueling path towards redemption, as she developed feelings for fellow planeswalker Jace Beleren and affiliated herself with the interplanar coalition of walkers known as the Gatewatch to protect the multiverse from grave threats. It's her fall from grace, her search for control, and her inner ethical battle that dominate the story of Liliana Vess. A story that begins a few hundred years ago on the plane of Dominaria. Liliana was born in roughly 4360 AR as a member of House Vess, an aristocratic family that ruled the land surrounding the Caligo forest of Benalia on the continent of Arona. Her family was held in high esteem by other governors and people of the land. Her father acted as general and leader of their principality, who took under his wing Liliana's brother Josu to develop the young man into a capable successor. As for herself, Liliana was from a very young age trained as a priestess in the Forward Order. This group of holy clerics acted as healers that served all the injured or afflicted, especially soldiers in the military. Vess trained under the tutelage of Lady Anna, but her personality was not fitting of a cleric. With raven hair that cascaded past her shoulders and framed a stunning porcelain face, she frequently acted the temptress, seducing young men and engaging in activities that would make any respectable priestess blush, much to Lady Anna's dismay. Despite her small rebellions, it was during her time with the Forward Order that Liliana developed her moral code. It's also at this time that the young Vess began exploring the forbidden arts of necromancy. She had developed mastering the white-aligned magic of healing the Forward Order employed, and so tried to develop her understanding by approaching it from the opposite avenue. She sought knowledge on death and decay in order to improve her powers over them, to keep them at bay and preserve life. This is where Liliana first realizes her strong connection to black mana. She would often sneak away from Lady Anna to practice the forbidden arts of necromancy, seen in the art of the card, Dark Dabbling. Liliana's upbringing was typical for the daughter of an aristocrat, but it quickly crumbled around her after her father's enemies declared war on House Vess and ravaged their estates and villages. During the conflict, Liliana's brother Josu suffered a horrible curse at the hands of their enemies. Lady Anna tasked Liliana with gathering herbs and roots from the Essis tree, ingredients necessary to heal Josu and prevent the curse from spreading. To Liliana's dismay, however, she finds the grove where the trees grew razed and burned to the ground in battle. With hope for healing her brother slipping away, Vess is approached by a mysterious man with sharp features and glowing golden eyes, who states he is one of her father's benefactors. He offers his assistance, but warns Liliana that her family might not wish for his cure. The man tells Liliana that she can still make the potion. All she must do is rely on her necromantic powers to revive the roots of the Essis trees. Liliana complies and brings the remedy to her brother. Despite Lady Anna's opposition, Liliana uses the potion on Josu, which can be seen in the art and flavor text of Tainted Remedy. It reads, "Drink this, brother. It will bring you rest." Truly, it cures him of his affliction, but at a terrible cost. It drives Josu insane and poisons him anew. In his stupor, he lashes out, killing several people including Lady Anna. Afraid for her own life and realizing she could no longer save her brother, Liliana uses necromancy to call upon those killed by Josu and turn the zombies against him. The emotional trauma and anguish unlocks something within the young healer, and Liliana's Planeswalker spark ignites, hurtling her to the grim plane of Innistrad. Racked with guilt over the events that transpired for House Vess, But intrigued by her newfound powers, Liliana finds Innistrad as a plane from which she can further develop her budding necromancy. It's a world rich in reserves of black mana, and Liliana is impressed by the ease with which the native ghoul callers can raise the dead. She learns more of the dark arts from various necromancers, but prefers the magic of animating the dead over the science of stitching life together that blue-aligned Skabarin offer. Vess does away with her old life as a forward-order healer and fully embraces the magic of death and corruption. Liliana spends time developing her skills on Innistrad, which we can see in the art and flavor text of the card Cruel Revival, which shows a young Vess killing and then raising an undead. The text reads, "On Innistrad, Liliana embraced necromancy, honing her powers by practicing on scores of undead, and sometimes the living." It's here that Liliana learns of another being like her, another creature capable of walking in the space between worlds. The vampire and Lord of Innistrad, Sorin Markov. In her vanity, Liliana believes herself to be Sorin's superior, and so challenges him to a duel, one in which the millennial-old vampire wins with ease. Sorin soundly defeats Liliana, but allows her to remain on his homeworld, so long as she acts the part of well-behaved guest. Vess studies for months with the vampires, liches, and ghoul callers to learn all she can of both death and undeath. They tell her that unimaginable power is within her grasp. All she must do is give up her own life and join the undead. But with her brother's horrible fate fresh in her mind, Liliana refuses to become a lich. In fact, memories of Josu continue to haunt her, and she soon departs the dark world of Innistrad for her family's estate on Dominaria to confront the man responsible for her brother's affliction. Liliana planeswalks to the Caligo Forest, only to find House Vess dilapidated. She confronts the mysterious man who tricked her into feeding her brother a tainted potion, and assaults him with her newfound powers. Although she seems to gain the advantage, the so-called Raven Man manages to escape, but it isn't the last she'll see of him. He'll continue to haunt Liliana through the decades and across the plains. Shortly after her return to House Vess, Liliana's search for power and knowledge brings her to the plane of Arcavios, and home of the famous Strixhaven School of Mages. With her background as a healer and her preference for death magic, Liliana decides to commit to Witherbloom, the College of Essence Studies. In the halls and classrooms of the Great Academy, Liliana perfects her talents of necromancy, gaining a nearly unparalleled understanding of the dark arts and black magic. But eventually, even the School of Mages no longer satiates her appetite for power and knowledge, and she leaves Strixhaven. Liliana's ambition takes her across the plains in search, as always, for greater power. But soon, catastrophe strikes. In the year 4500 AR, a little over 100 years since Liliana's spark ignited, a great power rolled across the multiverse, one that changed the very nature of what it meant to be a planeswalker. The Great Mending of Dominaria stripped the near-limitless power and eternal youth a spark granted, preventing all current and future planeswalkers from damaging the fabric of the multiverse. Vess, who had but a taste of what her spark offered, found herself without the strength she had meticulously gathered, and with a body that very rapidly began to age once more. Desperate to regain her power, an elderly and wizened Liliana meets with the Elder Dragon and Planeswalker Nicol Bolas, imploring him to assist her in recovering her magical potential and her youth. The dragon summons 4 of the most powerful demons in the multiverse, drafts a document, and brokers a deal between them and Liliana, one simple and direct. Liliana agrees to trade absolute subservience, her soul, for her youth and a fraction of the power she once possessed. This event unfolds in the Art of the Cards, Demonic Pact, and Liliana's Contract. We see Vess surrounded by her new demon overlords, absorbing the power granted to her through the signing of the contract. The flavor text of Liliana's contract reads, "Immortality is worth any price," a sentiment true to Liliana's deeper nature. For the next decades, the 4 demons, Profitt, Griselbrand, Razaketh, and Belzenlock, who each own an equal share of Vess's very soul, will act as brutal taskmasters, fomenting within her a deep resentment, an outright hatred, and desire for freedom that shapes her entire story, as she attempts all she can to be rid of her contract, a terrible mistake etched in permanence on her own skin. Sometime after Liliana's infernal contract, the necromancer travels to the citywide plain of Ravnica, a world of crime, corruption, and opportunity. Vess takes up residence and is contacted by a mysterious interplanar organization known as the Infinite Consortium, headed by the Planeswalker and Master Artificer Tezzeret. Tezzeret sees within Liliana a promising and manipulative ally, one who can further the Consortium's position within Ravnica and across the multiverse. He extends an offer of employment, and Liliana agrees to assist the Consortium from time to time. It's on a mission for Tezzeret that Liliana first meets a brilliant and handsome man who possesses great potential, but is frequently dogged by moral crises and mental instability. A mind mage and fellow planeswalker called Jace Beleren. Liliana is tasked with tracking down Beleren, who had once been a member of the Consortium, but had fallen out of Tezzeret's grace after attempting a coup to seize power. Although Vess finds Beleren, she doesn't turn him over to Tezzeret, seeing instead an opportunity. She uses her charm and wit to seduce Jace and manipulate him into deposing Tezzeret as head of the Consortium. As their affair continues, Liliana is ostensibly loyal and supportive of Beleren, a hallmark tactic often employed by the Temptress to achieve her own goals. And soon, her true motives are revealed. Liliana pits Jace against Tezzeret in a fight over control of the Consortium as part of a deal struck with Bolas to rid Vess of her demonic contract. The Consortium was once managed by the dragon himself, but in a coup d'etat, his protege Tezzeret usurped power from him. Liliana agreed to expedite the process in exchange for nullifying her contract. Unfortunately for Vess, Beleren's confrontation with Tezzeret and her plans for returning the Consortium to Bolas bear little fruit, and her agreement becomes void. Despite her manipulation and dubious dealings with Beleren, Liliana develops true feelings and affections for Jace, but no longer in his confidence and still shackled to her demonic chains. Liliana deems it time to leave Ravnica and planeswalks to meet one that controls her soul. The demon Profitt has a particularly strong hold over Liliana and often employs her to advance his own agendas. His ambitions bring him word of an artifact, ancient and powerful, that resides deep within the ruins of the Onaki ogres on the plain of Chandalar. The demon summons Liliana and sends her to Chandalar to retrieve it. As she ventures through the dense forest and ascends the stairs of the temple, Vess is attacked by a large and dangerous beast. She uses her skill in Death and Decay to effortlessly slay the creature before entering the catacombs. In the eerie mist and deep silence of the Onaki ruins, Vess hears faint whispers that direct her towards the object she seeks. On a pedestal sits an ornate and beautiful mask, crafted of fine chain, the artifact Profitt desires. The chain veil is the last creation of the technologically advanced Onaki ogres. filled with the power of the destroyed civilization and possessed by their spirits. The Chain Veil grants its users immeasurable strength, but time turns them into a vessel of resurrection for the spirits. The Veil kills any wearer not strong enough to withstand channeling it. Those that survive are cursed terribly, transforming them into demonic abominations. Liliana wrests the veil from its pedestal, but as she turns to leave, she's confronted by the large, brutish shaman, Garruk Wildspeaker. Another planeswalker, Garruk had been tracking the beast Vess dispatched on her way into the temple, and furious with how she killed it, charges the necromancer. The sudden appearance of Wildspeaker and his quick attacks overwhelm Liliana, and she's forced to use the recently acquired Chain Veil. With the power it grants, she regains the advantage and defeats Garruk. Filled with the energy of the Chain Veil, Liliana feels as powerful as she has ever been since the Great Mending, and an idea flashes brilliantly in her mind. With this artifact, she may be strong enough to confront her masters directly, to rid herself of her demons, and once more regain her soul. After testing the extent of the Veil's abilities by raising and conquering kingdoms on various planes, Liliana is comfortable enough in her powers to challenge her owners directly, and planeswalks to confront Kothafed, the demon that tasked her with the retrieval of the Veil. Vess taunts and berates the demon, ridiculing Kothafed for sending her on a mission that would grant her the ability to destroy him, and for overlooking the potential she would do just that. Their confrontation quickly turns to violence as Liliana's tattoos glow brilliant purple while she gathers the strength of the Chain Veil and hurtles a death spell at the demon, obliterating Kothafed and releasing her from his bind. But this much use of a cursed item has repercussions. Vess's tattoos begin bleeding and Liliana is racked with pain after calling on the Chain Veil. It seems the curse of the Veil is taking hold over the necromancer. With her brother Josu ever in the back of her mind, and fearing she may share his fate, Liliana is desperate to rid herself of the item, and so returns to the Onaki Temple on Chandalar. The necromancer seeks answers by resurrecting the corpse of the wisest man in a village, which earns her the ire of the townsfolk. Though the skeleton reveals nothing and speaks in cryptic messages, it acts in a most peculiar manner, protecting Liliana from assaults and fire hurled by the angered villagers. Vess, cornered and suffering from terrible spasms of pain, is tempted to succumb to her woes. But then, her skeleton companion reveals his true identity. He's none other than the golden-eyed and mysterious Raven Man, who tempted Liliana with a tainted elixir that transformed Josu into a raving monster. Once again, the Raven Man, who seems to have followed Liliana Vess across the multiverse, offers the necromancer a vial, one similar to that she gave Josu, that the Raven Man claims will heal her of her curse. Liliana is reluctant to put her fate in the hands of this mysterious being, but sees few other options. She takes the concoction, and her terrible wounds change. Soon, a golden glow surrounds her bleeding tattoos. The scars and the pain begin to heal. It seems as though she's freed from the Veil's curse. Vess displays her gratitude by stabbing the Raven Man, the man that ruined House Vess, and dispels her necromancy over the corpse. Taking up the Chain Veil once more, Liliana planeswalks to Innistrad, intent on eliminating the 3 remaining demons in her contract. Vess arrives on the Dark World in search of Griselbrand, the most cunning demon of Innistrad, and one to which she is bound. In the flavor text of his Secret Lair card, we can read that Griselbrand has mastery over death, and that his gift to Liliana greatly improved her own necromantic magic. Unfortunately for Vess, her hunt bears little fruit. No one has seen the Horde demon in several years. She searches in the crowded streets and the haunted swamps for traces of Griselbrand. But Liliana isn't the only planeswalker hunting on Innistrad. She's been tracked herself by Garruk Wildspeaker, who had been cursed by the Chain Veil during their confrontation on Chandalar. His body and mind are corrupting, and his nature magic is tainted by death and decay. Enraged, the huntsman corners Liliana in the grasp of Nephalia, but he soon realizes his mistake. Although Garruk overpowers Liliana, Nephalia is host to more corpses and remains than any other province on Innistrad, and the necromancer quickly summons an army to thwart Garruk's advances and allow her to retreat. Their skirmish is depicted in the art and flavor text of the cards Triumph of Ferocity and Triumph of Cruelty. Having successfully escaped Garruk, and with one demon destroyed, Liliana returns to her quest for freedom. Following rumors of Griselbrand's whereabouts, Liliana travels to the high city of Thraben, home of the Lunarch Council and church leader Mikaeus, who is said to possess knowledge of the demon's fate. Vess travels the causeways of Innistrad until she comes upon Thraben, only to find that the high city is under siege by the Ghoulcaller and Stitcher siblings, Gisa and Geralf. Their army of undead abominations assaults the walls of Thraben, and the city is thrown into the fog of war, where confusion and fear run rampant within the city's walls. This allows Liliana to enter undetected and undeterred, and journeys to the Lunarch's chambers, only to find him dead, slain by Geralf. But death isn't an end to service or to answers for Liliana, and she proceeds to resurrect the Lunarch, seen in the card Mikaeus the Unhallowed. She presses the undead for answers and learns that Griselbrand is trapped, along with countless other demons, within the silver monolith known as the Hell Vault. The magic of the Hell Vault and the nature of silver on Innistrad prevent Liliana's own black magic from destroying it directly and breaking her demon debtor free. The necromancer's plans are frustrated momentarily, but then Vess devises a method to indirectly assault the monolithic prison. She calls on the Chain Veil's power, wraps the Hell Vault in a sinister enchantment spell, then binds it to the young but valiant Knight Cathar Thalia, who organized Thraben's defenses, a large contingent of warriors and Cathars against the siege. The spell forces an unholy choice upon Thalia. She can either destroy the Hell Vault, releasing the untold demonic horrors trapped within, or she can sit and watch her entire battalion of soldiers breathe their last as the dark spell kills all under her leadership. A dire predicament for any, but Liliana bets on which way Thalia's heart will lean, and her bet is correct. The Cathar chooses to save her soldiers. In a brilliant flash of light and raw power, the Hell Vault breaks, its silver fragments shattering into thousands of pieces. Demons pour forth from their prison, and once more their vile presence is unleashed upon Innistrad. There's one demon Liliana desires to confront more than any other: Griselbrand, the overlord of demonkind on the plane and possessor of a fragment of Vess's soul. Though the demon traveled far across the plane after his escape, Liliana hunts Griselbrand with relentless ardor, slaying both angels and demons alike, anything that stands between her and her target. Finally, she corners Griselbrand, and as she prepares her killing blow, the demon makes one last, desperate play to save his life. He tempts her with promises of power, of wealth, of fulfilled ambitions. He admits she is strong, but there is much yet that Griselbrand can teach her. Liliana is not as naive as she had been when first making her demonic contract. She sees through Griselbrand's lies and moves to strike. On Innistrad, demons are the manifestation of pure black mana, and though their bodies can be destroyed, their essence remains until they recover and once more coalesce into physical form. To permanently eliminate Griselbrand, Liliana calls upon the powers of the Chain Veil once more, powers that have already slain one of her demons. With the artifact's strength coursing through her, Vess obliterates the demon, and Griselbrand's essence is no more. She's now free of 2 of her overlords, and feels the shackles over her soul loosening. But Liliana's reliance on the Chain Veil is binding its curse tighter to her. Though the elixir given to her by the Raven Man halted the curse's advancement, Liliana is herself besieged by the constant whispers of the Veil's channeled spirits. Haunted by the artifact she possesses, Liliana planeswalks once more to Chandalar, seeking answers and a way to rid herself of the Chain Veil. Vess is confronted by an angel as she approaches the crypt. It warns her against entering and against the use of the Onaki artifacts. Heedless of its pleas, Liliana kills the angel. With its dying breath, it tells her she is a vessel and a conduit for the Onaki spirits attempting to release themselves. As she plumbs deeper into the catacombs, Liliana is struck by visions of the Onaki at their zenith and their eventual destruction. A civilization that collapsed on itself despite its technological ingenuity. A terrible tragedy that was at all times orchestrated behind the scenes by the mysterious Raven Man. Wanting nothing more from the spirits and the golden-eyed stranger, Liliana attempts to return the Chain Veil, but her body refuses to move. It stays within her grasp despite her best efforts. Stunned, Vess animates a corpse to take the veil and return it, but even the undead refuses. Terror begins to set in for Liliana as she realizes ridding herself of the Chain Veil won't come easy. The spirits within raise their voices, speaking in weird languages or jumbled words. As the voices reach a fevered pitch, one spirit speaks out with surprising clarity. It addresses her directly, telling Liliana that she is now a vessel for the Onaki, and refers to the Chain Veil as a veil of deceit. Angered by her predicament, seemingly trading her demon overlords for spiritual possession, Liliana attempts to dissipate the spirit with the veil, but the artifact and its curse cause more pain with each use. Dejected and defeated, Liliana leaves Chandalar in anguish. She focuses on one issue at a time, and the more pressing is her demonic contract. With 2 demons still alive in the multiverse, Liliana travels to the plane of Ravnica to enlist assistance from an old flame. She approaches the mind mage Jace Beleren, and after much banter, charm, and drink, she attempts to seduce him and manipulate Beleren into ridding Liliana of her 2 remaining demons. This tact is known to Jace, who still remembers the pair's prior dealings, and he refuses, berating her on her dubious nature and on using the mysterious Chain Veil on fellow planeswalker Garruk Wildspeaker. Liliana, the expert temptress, smooths over Jace's ruffles and lures him in with intrigue, but she can't quite close the deal, as Gideon Jura, Hieromancer and White-aligned planeswalker, arrives from the plane of Zendikar with terrible news. 3 ancient, interdimensional beings with the ability to raise entire worlds, known as the Eldrazi Titans, have just broken from their millennia-old chains and are draining Zendikar of life and mana to satisfy their ravenous hunger. Jura relays the tales of Zendikar's destruction and asks Jace for his help. He surmises that much-needed allies will be necessary to thwart the Eldrazi's advance and save the plane. The request is also extended to Liliana, but seeing no benefit from risking her own life, and with her own ambitions in mind, she flatly refuses. As she walks through the bustling streets of Ravnica, she's once more dogged and confronted by the Raven Man, who mocks her for seeking Beleren's aid. With no one else on which to rely, Liliana returns to her estates on Innistrad to mull over her plans for ridding herself of her 2 remaining demons. Vess retreats deep behind the walls of her palatial manor to contemplate the mysteries surrounding both the Chainveil and the Raven Man. The two seem inextricably linked. After all, it appeared in her vision that the man had orchestrated the collapse and destruction of the Onaki, shortly after they perfected the burnished veil. But the Raven Man appeared before Liliana prior to her discovery of the veil, and even that of her latent planeswalker spark. While she ponders, Liliana realizes things are changing on Innistrad. It's always been a dark and grim world, but the plane seems to be gripped in hysterical madness, and the creatures of night are transforming into more gruesome abominations. While bolstering her fortress defenses, Liliana sees a lone rider on the horizon, followed closely by a pack of ravenous werewolves. She uses her necromancy to kill or maim the wolves, and the rider reveals himself to be Jace, worried by his efforts on Zendikar and in search of another planeswalker. Liliana requests he stay as her guest in the estate. Over drinks and dinner, Jace recounts the events that transpired on Zendikar. Liliana learns of the fate of two Eldrazi Titans, but that the third, Emrakul, had escaped. She learns also of the formation of the Gatewatch, the group of planeswalkers that stood united against the interdimensional threat and protected Zendikar from annihilation. Liliana scoffs at the Gatewatch, seeing them as a band of self-righteous pretenders without ambition or personal drive. Jace also reveals that he came to Innistrad seeking the vampire planeswalker Sorin Markov, as Markov was one of the 3 planeswalkers responsible for originally sealing the Eldrazi thousands of years ago. Liliana attempts to dissuade Jace from his endeavors. She's had dealings with Markov in the past, and he isn't as gracious a host as she. Heedless of her warning, Jace continues his search and uncovers the truth of the cryptoliths that are dotting Innistrad's landscape, of the crazed cults that have sprouted, of the madness gripping much of the plane. At the Drownyard Temple, he discovers that the cryptoliths are beckoning the last remaining Eldrazi Titan, calling Emrakul forth from the blind eternities to feast on the plane. Emrakul's influence is so powerful that even Jace, a master of mental magic and telepathy, falls under the maddening spell of the Titan. He returns to Liliana's estate and confronts her, throwing accusations that what is befalling Innistrad is all due to her designs. Beleren attempts to mentally assault her, but it seems Liliana is protected by the Raven Man and the Chainveil, who reflect Jace's attacks back. This is illustrated in the art of the card Liliana's Indignation, whose flavor text reads, "Days ago, you came to my door asking for help, Jace, yet now here you are with accusations?" She uses the Veil's power to bring Jace back to his senses. While Beleren leaves to seek the aid of the Gatewatch, fearing Innistrad may share the fate of Zendikar, Liliana attempts to exorcise the Onaki spirits from the Chainveil and rid herself of their malevolent whispers. She employs a master Geist Mage who utilizes a Witchbane orb to release the spirits and send them into the ether, but to no avail. The power and the curse of the Veil is beyond his skill set, and Liliana remains the spirit's vessel. In short order, the power of the cryptoliths beckon forth Emrakul from beyond the blind eternities. The massive and sinister Eldrazi appears before the high city of Thraben, engulfing the town and the plain in a desperate battle for survival against relentless Eldrazi hordes and those maddened by Emrakul's influence. The city's defenders are joined by the Gatewatch planeswalkers, standing firm and taking on the advancing Eldrazi. At first, Liliana is content to remain on the sidelines. She has no stake in the conflict and no outcome will further her own cause. But then, a realization dawns. If she can gain the trust and confidence of the Gatewatch, she may be able to use them as an effective tool in her own fight against her demon masters. As the battered Gatewatch and defeated Cathars of Thraben retreat further into the city, their chances of victory grow slim. Tireless and innumerable, the eldrazi advance can't be halted. But then, in their darkest hour, scores of undead pour forth into the streets of Thraben and hit the eldrazi head-on with the same inhuman stamina and fearless aggression. They are led from the fore by none other than Liliana Vess. These events are relayed to us in the art and flavor text of Dark Salvation, where an undead army rushes into Thraben behind the valiant Liliana. Its text reads, "Countless ghouls surged through Thraben's streets, and with them came the city's salvation." The necromancer's seemingly noble change of heart is seen in the title of her Planeswalker card, as Liliana stands as Thraben's dark yet promising last hope. The defeated Gatewatch and citizens of Thraben are bolstered in force and spirit by Liliana's ghouls. The tide of battle turns. No longer on the back foot, the Gatewatch pushes the eldrazi back. With Cathars and zombies fighting side by side, with noble white-aligned Gideon and conceited black-aligned Liliana fighting side by side, the assault on the ground is once more in control. The Gatewatch then moves to strike Emrakul directly. An insurmountable task, even for a combined group of planeswalkers. But Liliana's hubris sees her attack the massive titan head-on. Calling upon the power of the Veil, she sends forth waves of corrosive death magic. The spirits within the Veil grow restless. They wail in agony and scream warnings to Liliana about the destroyer of planes. The Onaki and the Raven Man urge Liliana to leave Innistrad. They seem to possess knowledge of the sheer power of the eldrazi. Vess remains undaunted, however, and draws upon even more power, using the full extent of the Chain Veil to reach levels of untapped energy she had in the days before the mending. In a fit of agonizing rage, Liliana throws all her might into her assault, which proves enough to actually harm Emrakul. The strain is too much for Liliana to bear, and before she can claim victory, she falls unconscious and near death on the streets of Thraben. Hours or perhaps days pass before Vess regains consciousness. She wakes to find that the city still stands, that the eldrazi were defeated and Emrakul imprisoned in the moon, and that her wounds were healed by the Gatewatch. Liliana is struck with a hint of sentiment. It felt good to her to have people that needed her, to be necessary. That, and her deeper affection towards Jace, prevented her from leaving Innistrad to its fate. Liliana agrees to take her oath and officially joins the Gatewatch, although she has her own plans of how best to manipulate and use her newfound allies. It's little surprise that Liliana's first action as a member of the Gatewatch is to drive a wedge between the group. She instigates the fire mage Chandra Nalaar to planeswalk to her homeworld of Kaladesh and seek retribution against her father's murderers. Kaladesh is a technologically advanced plane, but the corrupt and authoritarian consulate keeps inventions in a chokehold. Their chief of compliance, Betrayal, was responsible for silencing the quicksmith visionary and rebel, Kiran Nalaar, Chandra's father. While the two stalk the crowded Inventors' Fair in the city of Girapur, Liliana recognizes a shrouded figure, one the locals call the head judge, as the planeswalker and agent of Nicol Bolas, Tezzeret. Word spreads like wildfire through the fair that the head judge has in custody Renegade Prime, the leader of the rebels, who is in fact Pia Nalaar, Chandra's mother. Liliana advises Chandra against any rash actions, recounting how dangerous Tezzeret had been against Jace during their fight over the Infinite Consortium. Vess leaves Kaladesh to return to Ravnica and beseeches Jace to gather the remaining Gatewatch at the Inventors' Fair. Meanwhile, Tezzeret engages Pia in a public quicksmithing duel at the fairgrounds, one he intends to make to the death. As the head judge strikes a killing blow towards the overwhelmed Pia, the Gatewatch appear to protect her and Chandra. This is seen in the art of the card Dramatic Reversal. But Tezzeret's magnificent duel was merely a ruse intended to distract those at the fair and allow the consulate to confiscate all manner of inventions, most importantly, the planar portal technology housed within the planar bridge, the acquisition of which is Tezzeret's mission on Kaladesh. In the chaos of the ensuing Ether Revolt, Liliana tracks Tezzeret down and engages him in a battle at the bridge, where the planar portal is being expanded to contact other planes. In the invention's art of the card Extraplanar Lens, we can see the bridge opening up to another world, one with a beating sun between two massive, curved horns, an image eerily similar to the soul gem that sits between Nicol Bolas's own horns. Liliana calls on the power of the Chain Veil and hurtles volleys of dark magic at the Artificer, which he defends for a time. But with the assistance of the Onaki artifact, Liliana proves too great a foe for Tezzeret and overwhelms him. She questions his intentions on Kaladesh and learns of his directive given by Bolas to acquire the planar bridge technology at any cost. Liliana presses Tezzeret for further answers, but he refuses to offer any other information. She desires the location of Bolas and what his deeper motivations are, so she begins torturing the captured artificer. The agony proves too much, and Tezzeret reveals his master's location on the plane of Amonkhet. Fortuitously, this is also the location of Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded, one of Liliana's two remaining demons. An idea flashes in her mind, a way to get the Gatewatch's assistance in hunting down and killing the demon. In the aftermath of Ether Revolt and success of the Renegades, Liliana approaches the Gatewatch with her knowledge of Bolas and urges that they take immediate action by planeswalking at once to Amonkhet. Ajani Goldmane, the newest member of the Gatewatch, cautions against it. He's seen the power of Bolas firsthand and fought the Elder Dragon once before. He advises patience and acquisition of more allies before confronting Bolas. After deliberation, the rest of the Gatewatch concludes that a decisive surprise attack against the dragon now might stymie his future endeavors, and they agree to join Liliana in traveling to Amonkhet. Elated that she now has pawns to assist her, Vess planeswalks to the sands of Noctamoon with a smile on her face, one step closer to freedom. After the Gatewatch struggle to survive the hostile desert environment of the shifting sands, they reach the protected oasis of Noctamoon, a city guarded by a magical ward known as the Hekma and ruled by the 5 gods of the Trials. But this idyllic scene is beyond what it appears. In all aspects of daily life, from worship and prayer to labor and industry, the citizens are wholly devoted to their god pharaoh, a being the Gatewatch recognize to be none other than the dragon planeswalker Nicol Bolas. Bolas's visage is etched in every facet of life in Noctamoon, and the people of the city are unwittingly carrying out one of his nefarious plans, a plan the Gatewatch seek to disrupt. As the rest of the members gather what knowledge they can on this Bolas-twisted world, Liliana retreats deep in Noctamoon to contemplate her own mission and deliberate on how best to maneuver the Gatewatch pawns against Razaketh. While the necromancer plans, she's visited once again by the Raven Man, a being who seems to have the abilities to planeswalk and to track her at will. He warns Liliana of her ties to her new allies and states that she's getting soft. Her affections towards the Gatewatch will ruin her own ambitions and stymie her power. The two argue over Liliana's deeper motivations when Jace arrives to discuss a plan for the plane, a way to defeat Bolas when he reveals himself. Through the use of shades and other lurking abominations, Vess has discovered the chambers where the dead of Noctamoon are embalmed and transformed into the undead mummies that serve the living, depicted in cards such as Those Who Serve. but she's also stumbled upon the location where prized fighters and great warriors, champions of the trials, are not embalmed but rather scaled in a brilliant blue metal called lazotep and reanimated into fierce, relentless, undead soldiers. She takes Beleren to these chambers, and the two see a mural painted on the cavern walls, depicting a sinister being, lithe with grotesque wings. Liliana recognizes it as Razaketh, and divulges to Jace her plans on confronting the demon. Beleren becomes wary of her selfish intentions, realizing that she requested they planeswalk to Amonkhet in order to challenge Razaketh and free herself. He warns Liliana that they came not for her benefit, but to confront Bolas and protect the multiverse from his threatening reach. As Vess is caught in a moral dilemma between doing what's right and doing what she desires, the second brilliantly golden sun of Amonkhet traces its course through the sky to rest between the massive twinned horns of Bolas' shrine, seen in the art of the card, Approach of the Second Sun. The prophecies of Amonkhet state that the God Pharaoh will return when the second sun reaches its seat in the sky. The recounting of hours will begin, and those who are truly worthy will receive the God Pharaoh's blessing and be ferried to a wonderful afterlife. The citizenry all lie prostrate in worship as the gates to the afterlife open, a moment they've been praying and preparing for their whole lives. Their exaltation turns quickly to confusion, and then outright terror, as the gate to the afterlife reveals the demon Razaketh, who turns the life-giving waters of the Luxa into blood and heralds the destruction of Noctimoon. The recounting of hours are not what they seem. Rather than peaceful and eternal life with a benevolent God Pharaoh, the people of Noctimoon are attacked and brutally slaughtered by Nicol Bolas, who leads his corrupted, forgotten gods, his angels and demons, and his army of Eternals in wholesale destruction of Amonkhet. In the pandemonium of Bolas' assault on the city, Liliana tracks down and singles out the demon to whom she's indebted. Razaketh toys with Vess, urging her to confront him, a challenge Liliana assumes head-on. She remains cautious, however, well aware of the demon's power. He's quite possibly the most powerful of the demons bound to Liliana, and full of ancient knowledge. Vess is confident in her own growing potential and the strength of the Chain Veil, and so rushes to meet Razaketh. Before she can cast a spell or utter a word, an odd sensation takes hold of her, and Liliana freezes in place. Her body's paralyzed. It refuses to listen to her own mind's commands, and is instead drawn in towards Razaketh. The demon's sinister laughter bellows forth, and he basks in a victory so easily earned. In the signing of Liliana's contract for power and youth, Razaketh had placed a stipulation, a hidden clause, that would allow him to take control of her body and actions at his own pleasure. He uses the clause to assume total control and slowly brings Liliana forth. With no avenues for escape, it appears Vess's fate is sealed at the hands of her demonic possessor. In a brilliant flash, the Gatewatch appears to intercept Razaketh and protect their newest member. Jace conjures illusions and sufficiently distracts the demon to release Liliana from his control. It seems her gambit paid off, just as she anticipated. Her manipulation and alliance with the Gatewatch, a group of altruistic people at their core, brought them face to face with one of her demons. While Jace continues to distract Razaketh, seen in the art of the card imaginary threats, Liliana calls upon the Chain Veil to resurrect dozens of dead and decomposing creatures in the sediment beneath the Luxa. The zombies burst forth from the river and tear the demon apart, rending flesh and feasting on his remains. Liliana stands triumphant, free of one more demon and bound only to Belzenlock. She begins to taste freedom. But her victory over Razaketh is short-lived, as the hour of devastation continues to consume Amonkhet, and the God Pharaoh himself descends upon Naktamun. Their newest member no longer in danger, the Gatewatch turn to face the immediate threat of Bolas and jump into the fray. To save face and maintain standing with her fellow planeswalkers, should she ever require their assistance in the future, Liliana joins them in a desperate attack against the God Pharaoh. Naktamun is in shambles, its gods killed, its people scattered, its very foundation shattered, and in the rubble-strewn streets the Gatewatch stands before Nicol Bolas' splendor. They realize their haste in confronting him directly, but there's little else they can do than make a stand. Each member calls upon their own strengths and hurls attacks at the impervious Bolas. One by one, they're defeated by a being whose power exceeds their combined might. Gideon's invulnerability is pierced. Chandra's fires are extinguished. Jace's mind is torn asunder. Nissa's vines are corrupted. As for Liliana, her undead horde and necromantic powers are mostly ignored and prove no match for Bolas. The Elder Dragon, who has had dealings with Liliana in the past and knows her conceit and vanity to run deep, extends an ultimatum. He'll spare her life so long as she awaits his call, for the dragon will soon require her skills. To Liliana, self-preservation is most important. In disgrace and defeat, she betrays her broken Gatewatch allies and accepts Bolas' offer. She planeswalks from the destruction and embarrassment of Amonkhet, traveling next to her home plane of Dominaria, where both her undead brother Josu and her final demon await. The defeated Gatewatch join Liliana on Dominaria to lick their wounds, find allies, and consider their next actions carefully if they are to defeat Bolas when they next confront him. Liliana is berated by her fellow planeswalkers for pursuing her own ambitions rather than join something greater than herself. She contends that she can't be much help if she's chained to the whims of others and bound by contract. This is when Liliana reveals that the last of her possessors, Belzenlock, is on Dominaria and requests the aid of the Gatewatch once more to finally regain her soul. Only then, she states, can she truly be a free member of the Gatewatch. The others, with the fight against Razaketh and the sting of defeat fresh in their minds, refuse Liliana's pleas and see her as a selfish manipulator. Betrayed and dejected, Nissa leaves the Gatewatch and returns to Zendikar, highlighted in the art and flavor text of the card Broken Bond. Chandra too decides to leave, but merely to seek guidance, to train and improve her own powers before returning. This leaves Liliana and an injured Gideon alone. Gideon senses a deeper compassion within her buried under layers of fear, envy, and hatred, and he refuses to leave her. Liliana takes up her healing knowledge gained in youth and attempts to gather salves and concoctions to tend Jura's wounds. Their wanderings bring them to the derelict ruins of Vess Manor, Liliana's old home, filled with nothing save painful memories and feelings of hopeless guilt. Liliana inquires about the fate of her family and House Vess. A terrible curse seemed to have plagued the household, and all members of the family met gruesome ends. The estate itself has been transformed from beautiful forest into fetid and boggy marshland by the encroaching cabal, a sinister order of diabolists, assassins, and the corrupt, led by their glorious ruler Belzenlock. This transformation is seen in the flavor text of the card Dread Shade, which reads, "The forests surrounding the Vess estate became the Caligo Morass, a vast bog stalked by horrors too terrible to name." The elder demon Belzenlock is Liliana's final creditor, the last of the great demons with ownership over her soul. Matters are made worse and infinitely more personal when Liliana learns that the demon has raised her brother Josu through dark magic and transformed him into a Lich Lord, who now leads the Cabal forces surrounding the Vess estate. The sight of her brother is nearly unbearable. Liliana feels pangs of regret, guilt and sorrow for what befell her brother, and what has become of him now. She feels responsible for the anguish she's caused, and seeks to end his suffering by destroying the Lich body his essence inhabits, allowing his soul to cross over to the ether. It's at this point Liliana realizes Josu's purpose. Belzenlok deployed the Lich as a distraction. He knew she would have to rely on her full powers and those of the Chain Veil to end her brother's suffering, which would render her unable to call upon the Veil to slay Belzenlok. At an impasse, she approaches Gideon and divulges her situation. The Hieromancer agrees to help lay her brother to rest, and so gathers a force of Banalish captains and their soldiers to march on the Cabal stronghold surrounding House Vess. The mustered forces of Benalia draw out Josu and the undead Lich's troops, engaging them in pitched battle. As the fighting around the estate intensifies, Liliana singles out Josu and launches a devastating assault. Fueled by the raw emotions of failure, grief, sorrow, and pain, Liliana draws forth the power of the Chain Veil and uses it to break the Lich's curse, killing Josu. This moment is showcased in the art and flavor text of the card Final Parting, where we see Josu's body disintegrate into smoke and ash. Liliana says, "Sleep now, brother. This is the one gift I can give you." The dying Josu has a moment of clarity in which he blames Liliana and her dark magic for bringing their family low, that the cold oblivion of the void is all that awaits her. Beleaguered and severely weakened, Liliana can't hope to take on Belzenlok in her state. Gideon brings the necromancer aboard the Weatherlight, and the pair of planeswalkers join the crew in an offensive against the Cabal stronghold. Without the Chain Veil, Belzenlok's too powerful to defeat, but Liliana and Gideon hear word that the ancient and powerful sword, known as the Blackblade, has recently been unearthed and reforged. A blade constructed by Dakin millennia ago, with the power to drink souls and crush the strongest of bodies with a single slice. Legends tell that the Blackblade was even used to slay an elder dragon. The two waste little time, and with the Blackblade in Gideon's capable hands, attack the stronghold, bringing the fight to Belzenlok. Though the Elder Demon proves more than Gideon can handle, Liliana seizes the Soul Drinker and thrusts it into Belzenlok's body. The Blackblade eats away at the demon, removing his power and devouring his body. Liliana's moment of triumph is depicted in the card Settle the Score, whose flavor text reads, "You bound me with a contract only your death could end, and you thought me the fool?" This depicts the victorious Vess standing face to face with her final demon. Her decades-long indenture is finally at an end. Her drive for freedom has paid off. Long years of selfishness, of ambitious gains, and of power-seeking have left Liliana the strongest she's been since the Great Mending, and now in complete control of her soul, the true master of her own destiny. With Liliana's personal vendetta fulfilled, she feels a sort of loss, or perhaps an emptiness. She spent so much of her life on a singular purpose, unaware or indifferent of those she used, who she killed, and the means she employed to meet her ends. This, and her brother's horrible fate, resonate deep within her being. Perhaps there's more to life than vanity and personal gain. Perhaps she can find a sense of belonging and purpose within the ranks of the Gatewatch. She reunites with the members on Dominaria, as well as their recently recruited allies in Teferi, Jaya, Karn, and Ajani, to prepare for a final confrontation with Bolas. But just as she is about to join them, a specter materializes out of the shadows. The Elder Dragon and God Pharaoh himself planeswalks on Dominaria and demands Liliana's service. He hits her with a simple but life-shattering statement, seen in the flavor text of In Bolas's Clutches. Your contract is in default. You belong to me now. Serve or die. As the drafter of Liliana's demonic contract, Bolas placed in it a failsafe. Should all of the demons lose their control of Vess's soul, Bolas would assume full responsibility. Her moment of freedom was but a flicker of hope. Liliana has no choice but to serve the next master in line, and Bolas has grand plans for her. The two planeswalk away, where they prepare for the upcoming War of the Spark. She is the unwilling leader of his undead legions. The pounding of magical salvos, the thunderous lockstep of thousands of undead soldiers, the crumbling buildings and smoldering remains of once densely populated city streets, the shock and horror of millions who seek refuge and flee bloodshed. These images act as backdrop for the invasion of Ravnica and ensuing War of the Spark, instigated by Bolas in an attempt to regain the status of pre-mending planeswalker. Confusion grips the city as Bolas uses the planar bridge technology his agents confiscated on Kaladesh to open a portal between the desert of Amonkhet and the cityscape of Ravnica, allowing legions of Lazotep-plated Eternals to pour forth and raise much of the city. Bolas's purpose was to gather enough planeswalker sparks, then harvest and consume their raw power to fuel the ancient Elder Spell, conferring onto him the strength he lost during the Great Mending. The Gatewatch and their allies attempt to protect the citizens while also disrupting the Elder Dragon's plans, but they're met by the fearsome fighting force of relentless undead Eternals, led by Liliana Vess. The necromancer's role in War of the Spark is supreme leader and general of Bolas's Eternal Dread Horde. With her powers of necromancy and death, she can more effectively coordinate the efforts of the undead, and quickly turns them into a fearsome, systematic killing machine. Thousands of innocents are slaughtered, and dozens if not hundreds of planeswalker sparks are harvested by the efforts of Liliana Vess, who has no choice but to obey Bolas's order, if she wants to live. But in the rubble-strewn streets, amidst death and destruction, Liliana gains awareness into what truly matters, which is seen in the cinematic trailer for the War of the Spark set. Her recent endeavors with the Gatewatch, her triumph over her demons, and the closure she gained in her brother's fate, all shook Liliana deeply. She no longer sees herself as the center of the multiverse, nor does she believe her own life or ambitions to be above the collective good of millions. Liliana's cold and conceited heart warmed to the possibilities of camaraderie and compassion, of selflessness and justice. At the height of the war, with Bolas continually gaining sparks and casting the Elder Spell, Liliana has a change of heart. She remembers the oath she made to the Gatewatch, to defend the multiverse from those who would undo it. Filled with newfound purpose, Liliana turns on her master, knowing that her actions are suicide. The necromancer uses her innate magic and that of the Chain Veil to seize control of the Dread Horde and turn them against the Elder Dragon. Bolas, who's in possession of her soul, enacts Liliana's contract, which begins tearing her apart, eating away at her strength and her physical body. Vess's character transformation are illustrated in the art and flavor text of the cards Command the Dread Horde and Price of Betrayal, which show Liliana seizing the reins of undead, as well as the repercussions her action has. The flavor text reads, "The moment Liliana defied Bolas, her contract was broken, and her life was forfeit. But she was free to choose her fate, and she decided it was worth the price." Defeated in body but not in spirit, Liliana accepts her fate. But to her dismay, Gideon Jura intervenes. He was the only member of the Gatewatch who stood by Liliana's side, seeing her potential to be more than a selfish narcissist, and believing she had the ability to change. He transfers his invulnerability onto her and assumes the brunt of the contract's magic, killing himself while saving Liliana. This is seen in the art of Gideon's sacrifice. At a loss for what transpires, but realizing her work isn't finished, Vess continues her assault on Bolas and whispers to the undead Oketra and Bantu. She tells them that Bolas is the usurper and that they are the gods. The two God Eternals turn on Bolas, seen in the card D-Spark, defeating him and tearing what sparks he gathered free of his body. The Gatewatch and their allies stand triumphant in the aftermath of War of the Spark. But for Liliana, who defected from Bolas far too late within the conflict to garner sympathy, nowhere is safe. She flees to her ancestral home, but is pursued by the ghost assassin Kaya, who's been tasked with hunting down and killing Vess for her role in the war. Liliana finds her home restored and run by an imposter who, through the use of a sapphire containing a powerful djinn, has enslaved many and begun rebuilding the estate. The true Liliana becomes enthralled, but is brought back to her senses with the arrival of Teo and Kaya. They defeat the imposter, and Vess, who has in her possession Bolas's spirit gem, an item that allows his twin Ugin to observe and communicate from great distances, sees the spirit dragon appear before her. Though she's rid of her demons and her contract is no longer, Liliana won't truly be free so long as she is in possession of the Chain Veil. For years, the artifact has twisted her, attempted to use her, and she's been unable to part with it. Ugin advises her that two paths lay before Liliana, and that the current will most surely destroy her. She must choose a better one. With the pulsing spirit gem in one hand and the chain veil in the other, Liliana struggles against the Onaki spirits and the Raven Man who urge her to keep the powerful artifact. Finally, she does what she couldn't for so long. She releases the veil, and for the first time since the Great Mending, Liliana Vess is free. Stirred to sympathy, Kaya and Teo allow Liliana to live, but they bring the chain veil back to Niv Mizzet as proof of a kill. With a new path ahead of her, Liliana planeswalks to Fiora, taking up residence in Paliano under the pseudonym Ana Iora, in remembrance of Lady Ana, her old mentor, and of Gideon Jura, whose given name was Kithian Iora. An undisclosed time later, Liliana decides once more to build a new life, this time as Professor Seraphina Onyx within the College of Strixhaven on the plane of Arcavios. Vess had studied in Witherbloom College during her youth to learn more of necromancy and the dark arts. She returns to act as mentor and teacher, imparting both her knowledge gained in undeath and her wisdom through her multiversal travels. But Liliana has another motive for returning to the College of Essence studies. She's haunted, tormented by her past mistakes, and by the death of Gideon. An unbearable guilt plagues her each waking moment and every sleepless night. We see Liliana's anguish on display in the art of the card Confront the Past, where she constantly relives Gideon's sacrifice to save her life. She speaks to the mirror. Why, Gideon? Of all people, why save me? In an attempt to banish her remorse and bring back the only man who believed in her, Liliana approaches Beladros Witherbloom, Elder Dragon and head of Witherbloom College, seeking a spell to revive Gideon to bring him back from death. Though Beledros claims such a spell does exist, the dragon warns against using it, as it deeply changes both the caster and the target, and only worse things can become of it. While on Arcavios, Liliana also crosses paths with the Kenrith twins, young planeswalkers from Eldraine who've arrived to study at Strixhaven at the invitation of Kasmina. Onyx acts as mentor to Will and Rowan, advising them and teaching them to overcome differences and gain collective strength. When the Auric and their army of mage hunters attack Strixhaven, Onyx rushes to the university's defense and assists the Kenriths in reaching Extus, the Auric overlord, as he calls forth the Blood Avatar to destroy the school. Though she herself is thrown out of the fight by a teleportation spell, Onyx's wise teachings allow Will and Rowan to combine their powers once more and defeat the Blood Avatar together. In the aftermath of the attack, Seraphina Onyx resumes her role as educator in Essence Studies and Dark Magic, but she drops the pseudonym and once more assumes the mantle of Liliana Vess. Realizing she has much more to offer the multiverse than to take from it, Liliana knows she can't forget or outrun her past. All she can do is turn a new leaf, take a new path, and ensure her future is one of which Gideon would approve. Thanks for watching and listening to this video on the damnation and redemption of Liliana Vess. Leave a thumbs up if you like the video, and be sure to subscribe for more lore content. And now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Liliana? Has she atoned for her sins, or is she beyond redemption? Which planeswalker should we focus on next? Let me know your thoughts as well as suggestions for future videos in the comments below. A special thanks to my Patreon supporters, and if you'd like to become one, just click the link in the show notes. Shout out to script editor Kenan Orhan and to Alex Joaquim for the intro and outro music. References used can be found in the description. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.